Hello, my name is Elizabeth Sills and I am a Grants and Programmes Manager at PRS Foundation, the UK's leading charitable funder of new music and talent development. And thank you for joining us for this in conversation with the brilliant Rakhi Singh and Linda Begbie from Mnchester Collective. Beyond Borders is a co-commissioning and touring programme run by PRS Foundation in partnership with Creative Scotland, supported by the National Lottery through Creative Scotland's Open Fund, Arts Council of Wales, Arts Council of Northern Ireland, and Arts Council of Ireland. Beyond Borders was established in 2010 to support high-quality co-commissions and tours, stimulating collaboration between composers, performance groups, and music organisations across the 4 countries, and since 2014 with the Republic of Ireland. Mnchester Collective have received Beyond Borders in 2019 and most recently in 2023 for the Unforward Field with composer Fergus McCready. It's great to have you both with us today to talk about the project, its successes, and how the Beyond Borders programme has helped. So, Linda and Rakhi, thank you again for being with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, I'm Rakhi Singh. I'm violinist and artistic director at Mnchester Collective, and that basically involves sort of curating the programme that we present alongside with Linda and our new co-AD Jasmine Kent-Rodgman, and then performing it and taking it around the country, around the world, really, taking this music that we create. And we've worked a lot with PRS and commissioned lots of new music.
I'm Linda. It's a pleasure to see you, Elizabeth. I've been with Mnchester Collective since 2020 and joined them primarily to shape up fundraising for the organisation and help it grow. But I do have both a journalist and an artistic background, and I'm currently the chief executive of the organisation. So working with the team to to get money to manage our operation effectively and to continue to make fantastic projects and take them to as many people as we can.
Thank you so much. We're both great people to have to talk about this fund and your experience. So can I just ask you a bit about your experience with Mnchester Collective, with commissioning and performing work, and why you decided to apply for Beyond Borders?
Yeah, I think I'll let Rakhi speak about the commissioning and why we commission, and then perhaps I can say a little bit about how we saw this fund and thought it was particularly well suited to what we were trying to achieve.
Sure. Well, commissioning is a huge and very important part of our work, because I guess we come from like a hard classical training, but we're all people who are living now. And if we're only playing things of the past, then we're not really evolving ourselves or helping the art form to evolve. So how do you do that? You support things that are being written right now and all of the composers who are reflecting the society that we are living in. So it just feels, it's actually a very natural thing to do, is to commission. It feels like that's always been done, and so many great works wouldn't exist now, like Beethoven 9 or all the string quartets. They were all contemporary commissions of their time. So if we're not engaged with that, I feel like I'm being a bit of a museum musician. So it just feels very important to be reflecting what's around us. Yeah.
And I think one thing Mnchester Collective tries to do, and that we're committed to doing, is that we concurrently try to develop artists and to develop us as an artist-led organisation. So I guess as chief executive, those are the two reins that I'm always trying to balance. And for this particular project, there was an obvious, you've got a brilliant set of musicians coming together. But actually for all of them, there's an opportunity to grow and learn, because you're kind of bringing in different influences, Scottish folk, jazz, classical training. So there's this kind of wonderful dialogue that's already set up. And in terms of Beyond Borders, that's cultural, it's bringing the kind of music traditions of the various corners of the UK together. And I think for us organisationally, there was also an opportunity to develop our relationships strategically, which is really crucial as well, and it's just as important as the kind of artistic output. We would love to develop a stronger relationship with Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And it's not always an easy thing to do, because you really, the first gig that you do in a place is going to be a bit of a risk. You haven't yet grown an audience there. So this grant enabled us to take that step, and it just came at the right time, I think. So you know, and we'll build on that. You know, I think it's an opportunity to ignite something that we can then go on to build on.
Oh, great, thank you. I love that term, museum musician. I'm gonna use that again. And yeah, applying at the right time is definitely a good tip. So speaking of about your project, most recently the Unforward Field, who were the other partners involved in the project, and how did these connections come about?
Well,
musicians.
Musically, it was a collaboration between Fergus McCready jazz trio, and also Donald Grant, who is a folk fiddler as well as a fantastic classical violinist. So we worked to put a program together. We commissioned a piece from Fergus. He kind of made a suite for jazz trio and string quartet, and that was one of the main works. But as I was putting together the rest of the program, you know, we had Donald, who is a fantastic Scottish voice in his own right as well. So it was beautiful seeing him come together with Fergus, seeing the Fergus trio, learning from the contemporary music we were bringing. We bring bits of Kurtag and bits of sort of Sardinian and Tuvan folk music that had been transcribed. So I was pulling on sort of folk elements, contemporary music elements, old elements. We played some Haydn, and it all the music started to sort of infuse each other. But so they were the sort of musical partners, musical collaborators. And then we took the show up to Edinburgh Jazz and Blues Festival, so that they were the kind of strategic partners in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already had some touring partners within England. So we had interest from venues in the project. So in some sense, we could have done a sort of smaller version, I guess, if we hadn't been successful in obtaining a Beyond Borders grant. That's probably what we would have achieved. It would have been smaller scale, and we'd have done a smaller touring circuit to places we already knew. But it did enable us to develop this new relationship with Edinburgh. And I guess the partners in that were thinking about who was in Donald's and Fergus's sort of orbit that we could start talking to see what the opportunities, and sort of plugging into their network and area of expertise, which I think is just so crucial when you're thinking about partners and how you going to approach that partnership when you're writing the bid. I think
I have to say, it was an amazing gig. We just did it last week. It was in a circus tent, a Spiegel tent, you know, such an atmospheric scenario, and it was sold out. So, you know, it was a real success. And I think we had so many comments on the sort of variety of the program. So people who would have come to see Fergus would have had a lot of surprises and been exposed to new things. And even Fergus, within his suite, within the composition, he'd taken his old tune, the Unforward Field, but he'd reworked it in a really different way. So there was real sense of evolution and development and a lot of playfulness. Actually, it's gorgeous.
Amazing, thank you. And I came to see it at South Bank Centre, which was also amazing.
Yeah, we did a Ceilidh after the
yeah, I did get involved. So yeah, so now that we've kind of like talked about how you've had Beyond Borders funding before, what was the process like in applying when you have applied, and how long did it roughly take you to do the application form?
You sometimes, there are these timings that you give on the application form, right? And what I would say is that those timings apply if you've already done all the legwork and the thinking. Like a lot of the quality that goes into submitting a funding application is done in the months of thinking, mulling, developing, honing, and then you're ready to put it in. I think that it's a mistake to think that you can open up an application form and just do it in a day or a few hours if you haven't done that, because actually what those application forms do is really expose the holes in your project. Whether it's, I mean, it's quite often when I'm approaching it, the first thing I'll do is the budget, because I sort of feel like, right, okay, if I can't get the budget completely watertight, it means that there's some aspect of the project that I haven't quite thought about properly, or I haven't sort of secured yet. So I think it's, in some ways, that's quite a good place to start, because it then triggers off bits of work that you need to do in order to sort of firm up the project. And I think quite often I will open up an application form way in advance of my planned submission date, and just look at, and I'll write down the questions, and I won't do any more than that. I may close it and then put it away for until a kind of week before the deadline or whatever. But I think it's that, know what the questions are and let them run concurrently with your thinking and developing of the project. There's nothing better than a funding deadline to actually whip you into gear and make you sort out the things that need sorting. But that's the way to do it, not to put in something that's sort of half-baked, I think.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. I love the fact that you said you do the budget first, because that is probably maybe everyone's least favorite part of the funding application. So if you get it out of the way first, then you're on a roll, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that it's not like, don't be scared of it. It's the budget. The budget is integral to the art. That you can't separate these two things. And I think that's the big myth, is that somehow we can think about the art and the money is sort of like, oh, you know, I'd rather not think about that. We have to be realistic that these two go together. And actually use the budget as an opportunity to, like I say, expose gaps like that. The budget will feed your to-do list, because you think about actually, how many musicians do I need? How much rehearsal time is that really going to require? Have I confirmed that fee with X, Y, or Z? Because, you know, you want to be putting as accurate figures as you can into that budget. So that's why, like, don't see it as an add-on. Don't see it as something separate. See it as part of the artistic process, I think.
Great, thank you. So once you'd written the application and received that you got a successful grant, how did the project get underway, and what was the experience with the composer, and what did they kind of take away from it?
I think so. We've talked about the idea of, you know, what Fergus was going to do, but then you kind of leave it to the composer to get on with it, and you just keep your fingers crossed that you're going to like what you get, because you never quite know. So we turn up on day one, and actually Fergus wasn't, so I talked about my ideas for the rest of the program, but I think he didn't quite know what to expect. So it was a nice sort of surprise for everyone. And obviously with commissions, there's no recordings you can listen to. So, you know, when you're playing it and hearing it for the first time, it's really quite exciting. But, you know, there's a lot of trust involved. So be very, you know, careful and sure about who you choose to collaborate with as well, I suppose. You know, you want to really believe in who they are and what they do, because you're placing a lot of trust. And then, yeah, you just kind of put it together and take it on the road and make it as sparkling as you can, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the beyond, for us, the Beyond Borders was geographical, and it was also artistic in terms of the genre. And I think one of the learnings for us, which we are, the more we work in this way, the more obvious it is that if you're working with people who are coming from a different musical genre to yours, like, you allow enough time for them to work in a different way. So actually, if you're a jazzer and you're used to a lot of improvisation, but then we're a classical music organisation and demanding a score to be delivered at a certain time so that the musicians can get it for rehearsal. Like little things like that need extra care, I think. But I mean, no, it was fantastic. And I think Fergus McCready is obviously a real star, and he worked so closely with us in terms of marketing and being able to tell the stories behind the work, which is so important for Mnchester Collective. And, the other thing that we said in our application was that the beauty of collaboration, and especially cross-genre collaboration, is that you allow different audiences for those artists. So actually, Fergus coming to us and being there with our South Bank Centre audience, but they're also bringing his own audience, and that's the a kind of beautiful part of the project as well. But I think, as Rakhi said, once you've got the money in, and a lot of the planning has been done in order for you to get the money in, then the kind of joy can start and the sort of playfulness.
I mean, what's lovely as well is that we definitely plan for this project to go further. It's not just we do this and that's the end. We're sort of we're trying to organise more tours, and it's really nice. These things can have a life beyond the initial outing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was going to ask you if there's any kind of plans for this piece to have kind of more of a legacy. Do you see it going anywhere else?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've got quite a lot of interest in Europe for it. I would love to. I feel like we dipped our toe in the Scottish circuit, but I feel like we can definitely go back and do more there. So hopefully now that we've had a good outing there, people will sort of start to trust and be excited about the sort of Mnchester Collective brand, and hopefully it will go to Europe, and we'd love to record it too. I mean, the thing is that if you get money that enables a brilliantly talented and creative group of individuals to be in a room together and work, then you've just set something on, you've set something alight. And I think the best grants do that.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of like highs and lows of touring the piece?
I mean, it's generally the only lows about touring is the traveling. But getting to be on stage with those guys every night, and different things happen. And I guess what was gorgeous, we had this piece which we did all together and some of Donald's tunes, but part of the program was also listening to each other play. So the trio would do some stuff, or the quartet would do some stuff. So it was a real dialogue. And then the way we all came together. So yeah, it was very, very positive experience. And they're also just such lovely people, which makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, that's so powerful. I think the Kaylee was a good bit of a highlight. It's nice to see audiences just letting their hair down and doing some music, making dancing of their own after the show.
Yeah.
But the other thing for me was, as Rakhi referred to trust, and when you can plan and plan and plan, but then you have to allow for some spontaneous magic to happen, of course, when on stage or in the rehearsal room. And I think that for me is always the highlight. You never quite know what's going to come through. And there were some beautiful moments in that show, particularly around the movement from jazz into classical, like proper classical Haydn string quartet playing, that just real goosebump moments. And I think the fact that we were able to carry that off just said so much about that group of musicians.
Thank you. And Beyond Borders is a scheme that kind of like strengthens cross-border partnerships. Do you think that you'll work with some of the partners again now that you've done it through this scheme?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that we're already I mean, we didn't know Fergus before this. We knew Donald Grant because obviously he's played with us as a violinist, but we didn't know Fergus and his trio. And I think there's a real friendship blossomed there, and a very sort of longitudinal relationship, which is what we try to foster as an organisation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so definitely with existing partners, but also welcome the new ones as well.
Yeah. And for our audience, anyone who's thinking of applying for Beyond Borders, you have kind of given us some good tips already, Linda, but do you have any other big tips for applying?
Yeah, I mean, I think allow more time than you think. I mean, that's my biggest tip. And you've got to be very clear about what you're trying to achieve, but also look at what Beyond Borders is trying to achieve. I think that's the thing, like be really familiar, because the funding relationships are two-way. It's not, you're not a cash point that we're just coming to and like putting our credit card into. It's like looking at what that particular funding stream is trying to achieve. And what I always think of when I'm writing the application is, how can I help Elizabeth and, you know, the PRS Foundation achieve what this is trying to do? Because I think it's like the funding is so competitive at the moment that you really have to try and make your project land in that sweet spot where what you're trying to do and what we're trying to do is sort of overlaps. And the word count is tricky, and I think it's the grant writing is a flawed system in a way, because many artists are not necessarily writers, and I think if you're not a writer, do your best to convey the substance of what you're trying to say, but then get somebody else to read it and make sure that it comes across.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate that, like when in the past when I've done grants for myself and not been lucky enough to be in an organization that can do it, it's I definitely had to go through a few drafts. You know, you have an idea floating around and maybe you put it in words, but maybe there are too many words and you need to distill it, make it as clear as possible. And it definitely helps to have other people read it, because they can say, oh, you're kind of saying the same thing there that you said there, so let's just put it in one sentence and let's take out those extra words. And yeah, if you need help, yeah, you might go through a few drafts of it, so that's where the extra time sort of comes into things.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, I always do my drafts on I use the online character count, just Google it, and I do all of my writing on that, because it's when you're in forms that have got a word or a character count limit, you can't get into flow if it's constantly cutting you off. So do that work somewhere else, that way you can just sort of keep a general eye on where you're up to in terms of the word count. I mean, I'll tell you my kind of secret trick, which really works for me. Everybody has to find their own thing, but I mean, I will sit with a project for a while, and usually I procrastinate. So I procrastinate because I'm still needing to think about it. Then usually what happens is I'll go for a big walk and I'll go to bed, and then the next day I'll wake up and be right, okay, now I'm ready to go. I think it's like you need that energy of like, this is it. I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The worst thing is just spending hours and hours at the computer trying to you know, fiddle around with it. Yeah,
it is the worst when you're just staring at a screen hoping for it all to come together.
Wait for it to it happens in yourself, and then you're able to.
Yeah, but I think your point about looking at what Beyond Borders is about and how this project is helping Beyond Borders achieve what it's needed is really useful for people applying. And thank you so much for joining us. We've come nearly to the end, but can I ask what's next for you at the moment with Mnchester Collective?
Well, we've just announced our next season, so that's all fresh and exciting things out there. We're kind of still burrowing in the background to make sure all of that comes alive when it needs to. And we're also thinking about the year after as well. Yeah.
Oh, thinking well ahead.
Yes. Well, it's like you germinate things, don't you? You put the seed in, and then little shoots start to form, and then, you know, a year later it's a fully fledged plant. But it does take a little bit of watering along the way.
Oh no, that's a good analogy. Thank you.
And of course, we've just welcomed Jasmine Kent-Rodgman as our co-artist director, so it's a very exciting time for us as a team just to to be thinking ahead and very exciting things coming in the pipeline for the 25-26 season. So yeah, watch this space.
Great, yeah, no, definitely watch this space, and thank you so much to Linda and Rakhi both for talking about your experience with Beyond Borders. Unforward Field was such a wonderful project. Beyond Borders is currently open for applications from music creators and organisations. The deadline to apply for Beyond Borders grants of up to £15,000 is the 29th of July at 6 p.m. And applications can be made via the PRS Foundation website on our grant portal. So go to prsfoundation.com to see that. If you have any questions, do get in touch on info@prsfoundation.com. So thank you again and goodbye.
Bye.